Let's talk about the secret to modern flight. What if I told you it wasn't some crazy, powerful engine, but a bicycle shop? Seriously, today we're going to dig into the incredible story of Wilbur and Orville Wright. These were two brothers, no college degrees, who somehow solved one of the biggest engineering puzzles in all of history: how to make humans fly.
Okay, try to picture this. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around now, but that very first flight, it covered just 120 feet. To put that in perspective, that is less than the wingspan of a modern jumbo jet, like a Boeing 747. It was just a tiny hop, a blink and you miss it moment in the air.
So you gotta ask, how did a little 12-second hop completely change the world? Well, the answer isn't really about the flight itself. It's about the how. It's the revolutionary method they used to get there. A method that basically told all the so-called experts of their day, "You're wrong," and laid the groundwork for every single plane that's ever flown since.
All right, so who were these guys, these brothers who defied all the odds? Well, they weren't rich industrialists or famous scientists. Nope, they were something way more practical, and as it turns out, a whole lot more effective.
So Wilbur and Orville, their dad was a traveling bishop. And get this, neither of them even finished high school. They were entrepreneurs, though. They started a printing press. And then, when the bicycle craze hit, they opened up the Wright Cycle Company. And this shop wasn't just a business for them, it was their laboratory. All that hands-on mechanical work gave them this totally unique insight. They understood that an unstable machine, like a bicycle, could be controlled if you just practiced enough. Their fascination with flying actually started with a little toy helicopter their dad gave them. But what really lit the fire, what got them serious, was the tragic death of the famous glider pilot Otto Lilienthal. That, they said, was the moment everything changed.
Okay, and this is where we get to the absolute core of their genius. See, while all the best-funded, smartest engineers in the world were in a mad dash to build the most powerful engine they could, the Wrights took a step back. They realized everyone was solving the completely wrong problem.
Think about it like this. On one side, you had guys like Samuel Langley. He had the backing of the US government, tons of cash, and his whole approach was just brute force. Build a huge, powerful engine, strap it to an airframe, and, well, hope it flies. But the Wrights, on the other hand, saw it completely differently. They knew from their bicycle shop that power is totally useless if you can't control the thing. So they decided, forget the engine for now. Let's master the art of actually flying first. They were all about giving the pilot total, absolute control. And you can see their step-by-step process right here. It's brilliant. It all started back in 1899 with a simple kite. They were testing this idea they called wing warping. Wilbur actually got the idea from twisting an empty inner tube box in the shop. But then came 1901, and their first big glider was a total disaster. It produced way less lift than they expected. Now, a lot of people would have just given up, but not them. This failure is what led to their single greatest breakthrough. They started questioning all the existing data, all the science. So what they do? They built their own wind tunnel right there in the back of the bike shop, and they tested over 200 different wing shapes. They created their own super accurate data from scratch. And that data, that's what led to the 1902 glider. That was the one, the masterpiece. It was the machine that finally cracked the problem of control. And you have to understand just how close they came to quitting. It's honestly hard to believe. After that 1901 glider failed so badly, Wilbur was completely crushed. He actually told Orville that man wouldn't fly for 1,000 years. Think about that. That's a moment of just total despair. And it's what makes what they did next just so incredible.
So here's the crazy part. With that 1902 glider, the Wrights had basically invented the airplane before they even had an engine. Their true legacy, the thing that changed everything, is this system: 3-axis control. They figured out how to combine a forward elevator to control pitch, that's nose up, nose down, with wing warping to control roll, which is tilting side to side. And then they added a movable rudder for yaw, that's nose left, nose right. That combination, that's it. That is the fundamental control system that is still used on pretty much every single fixed-wing airplane flying today.
All right, so the control problem was solved. Only then did the brothers finally turn their attention to power. And they didn't buy an engine. Nope, they built their own right there in the bike shop with their amazing mechanic, Charlie Taylor. It was a super lightweight, 12-horsepower engine.
And the contrast between them and their main rival is just, it's wild. You had Samuel Langley with 50 grand in government funding, which was a massive fortune back then, and a beefy 52-horsepower engine. And his machine, it just nosedived right into the Potomac River, not once but twice.
Meanwhile, you have the Wrights with less than $1,000 of their own money from the bike shop and this tiny little engine. And they're the ones who did what Langley couldn't. It just proves it was never about the money or the power. It was about having the right method.
And that methodical approach led to this single moment. December 17, 1903, 10:35 in the morning. Orville is at the controls. The Wright Flyer lifts off into this freezing cold headwind, and it flies for just 12 seconds.
But wait, that wasn't the whole story. They didn't just fly once. They flew 4 times that day. And with every single attempt, they got a little better, went a little farther. The very last flight of the day, with Wilbur at the controls, lasted almost a full minute and covered over 850 feet. See, this wasn't some lucky one-off hop. This was proof. They had a real, working, and most importantly, controllable flying machine.
So you'd think this would be front-page news around the world, right? That they'd be instant heroes? Yeah, not so much. For the most part, the world just responded with silence and a whole lot of disbelief. The next chapter of their story wasn't a celebration. It was a long, frustrating fight just to be recognized.
I mean, for almost 5 years, they basically worked in secret back in Ohio. They were terrified competitors would steal their designs, so they kept perfecting their machine on the down low, eventually making flights that lasted over half an hour. And still, almost nobody believed them. It wasn't until 1908, when Wilbur finally went to France and put on these absolutely stunning public flight demonstrations, that the world finally woke up and realized, whoa, these 2 guys from a bike shop actually did it? And this headline right here just says it all. It's from the Paris edition of the New York Herald, and it perfectly captures that skepticism. The Wrights have flown or they have not flown. They are in fact either flyers or liars. The media was openly mocking them. A lot of people were totally convinced they were just a couple of frauds.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? What can we learn from their incredible journey? Because their story isn't just some dusty old piece of history. It's actually a powerful blueprint for how to innovate and solve really hard problems, something any of us can learn from.
Let's break it down into 4 key lessons. First, solve the right problem. They knew control was the real challenge, while everyone else was just chasing engine power. Second, you have to embrace failure as a learning opportunity. For them, their worst glider test wasn't a defeat. It was data that led them to build their wind tunnel. Third, trust your own data. When all the existing science books were wrong, they didn't quit. They just wrote their own. And finally, and this is a big one, persistence. They pushed through technical setbacks, public ridicule, and years of being ignored, but they never, ever gave up.
And I want to leave you with this final thought from Orville himself, which really captures the complicated legacy of what they created. Years later, looking back on the role of the airplane in war, he said he regretted all the terrible damage it caused, but he felt it was like the discovery of fire. Despite the destruction, he believed it was ultimately a good thing for the human race. It's a really powerful reminder that every great invention comes with this huge responsibility. A story that all started with 2 brothers in a small bicycle shop, and it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the next bicycle shop out there that's about to change everything?